Hello everyone, this is Yoko. On this channel, I feel that information about what is happening in China is often not correctly conveyed to countries other than China, so I will be disseminating the information I have gathered in English. I'm getting information from multiple media, so I'd be happy if you could comment on the content of the video. Also, my native language is not English, so I use an AI speaker to create the voice to convey the information correctly. If you like it, please subscribe to the channel and support us. This time, I would like to introduce the story of a person who subscribes to the New York Times named Krugman. This is a story comparing modern China and old Japan. Originally it was a paid article, but it was compiled after seeing the SNS and YouTube of the person who introduced the content. Some people may not know Krugman, but he is a world-famous Nobel laureate. Simply put, Krugman says the Chinese economy is headed in a dangerous direction. As a premise, Krugman sees the future of the Chinese economy as sluggish. And he says that China's economy now and Japan's economy in the 1990s have something in common. I think that many people who are watching this channel already know these two recognitions. I don't think anyone thinks that China's economy will improve in the future. In other words, Krugman is also a recognition that is supposed to be the same. In China, the real estate sector is in serious trouble at the moment, and there are issues of a declining birth rate and an aging population, so I don't think China has learned anything from Japan. This is where it gets interesting. What Krugman is saying is that China in the future will be in a worse state than Japan was in the past. I think there are quite a lot of people who say that China in the future will fall to the same level as Japan in the past. But Krugman says it's not the same, it's worse. Krugman, who won the Nobel Prize, said it, so it's getting a lot of attention. It's getting a lot of attention, especially in the Chinese-speaking world. As to why such a decision is made, there is no special reason that no one has thought of before, and I am speaking based on an orthodox analysis. Basically, China has the same problems that Japan once had. One is the declining birth rate and aging population. The phenomenon of declining birth rate and aging population is common in both Japan and China, but it is said that there is a common denominator. One of them is the low birth rate. Japan is low, and China is also low. In China, for various reasons, the number of young people who do not get married is increasing rapidly, and the tendency to marry later is also progressing. The age at which people get married is getting older, and the number of families with only one child has increased. So, like Japan, the birth rate is declining. Another reason is the low acceptance of immigrants. In other words, we are not supplementing the labor force that has decreased due to the declining birth rate with immigrants. This is a method similar to immigration, but it is also quite common in Japan. Americans see Japan as having few immigrants, and they seem to have the same opinion about China. I think that supplementing the problem of declining birth rate and aging population with immigration is a special solution when viewed on a global scale. Even if we accept a lot of immigrants, we will be aging in the future, so in other words, we are increasing the elderly population in the future. If there is a shortage of working population, I think it is more important to change the system so that the economy can run even with a small number of people rather than making up for it with immigration. However, it is not possible to say whether it is made in Japan. Some may be able to do it, but inefficient methods are still common. Since many people are doing inefficient work, productivity is not improved, and in the end, the story is that immigrants make up for it. Unlike America, Japan does not have a culture of accepting immigrants, so we need to work hard to improve productivity. Due to the increase in immigrants, Japanese culture, Japanese traditions, and communication unique to Japanese people will be lost, and there is a possibility that the level of happiness that is unique to Japanese people will not improve and will decline. Immigration is unsuitable for Japan, so the government needs to stop thinking about immigration as a countermeasure against the declining birth rate and aging population, and move in the direction of working hard to improve productivity. As long as the government does not act, we will deal with the problems of the declining birth rate and aging population in the way Americans propose. From the point of view of Americans, both Japan and China have the problem of declining birth rate and aging population. The declining birth rate and aging population can be improved by improving productivity, but the current situation is likely to have a negative impact on the economy. Even though they know what they really need is increased productivity, Americans still think they can't do it. China has a one-child policy, which is especially dangerous. The negative impact of this on the economy seems to be enormous. And recently, Krugman says, China has a big challenge that will add to the problem. It means that the unemployment rate among young people is too high. One article says the unemployment rate is 21%. This means that 1 in 5 people who are supposed to be the labor force and create wealth are unemployed. Some of the wealth created by these people will become the source of funds to support the elderly, but the low birth rate, aging population, and high unemployment rate are increasing the possibility that the lives of the elderly will deteriorate. It is the current situation in China that there is. When you know that this kind of phenomenon is happening, you can see that China has a more serious problem than Japan. Another thing Krugman is saying is that consumption is not recovering in China. In other words, there is an oversupply and a shortage of domestic demand. There are so many people in China that if the Chinese work and produce a lot, they need to consume a lot. Of course, selling to foreign countries is one of the options, but people in countries other than China are changing and don't want to associate with countries with large geopolitical risks. For example, recently in Japan, people who used to trade seafood with China have stopped distribution because China has restricted imports. China's trade is shrinking as Western countries begin to realize that it is dangerous to have a deep relationship with China due to sudden and major changes for political reasons. What about domestic demand? Currently, domestic demand in China is sluggish, and deflation is progressing in China while there is inflation all over the world. The main reason is oversupply. If you raise the price, your rival will take the market share, so the price competition is intensifying. Since there is no way we can't raise prices, our profits will continue to decline, so the salaries of our employees will also decline. We are in what is called a negative spiral. Therefore, one of the reasons for the deterioration of the Chinese economy is that domestic consumption in China is sluggish. And Krugman isn't just talking about the economy. When China entered a period of low growth, many people were in poverty and society began to become unstable, indicating that the future of China is bleak. Compared to Japan, GDP growth was low and deflation continued, but there were almost no people who were poor and had nothing to eat. Because there were various safety nets. It was not in Japan that social instability caused riots. There have been riots in France recently, and riots are not uncommon in France. Japan had a long period of economic stagnation, but it was safe and there weren't many people starving to death. It's normal in Japan, but it's not normal when you look at it from a foreign country. Rather, the situation in Japan where riots do not occur and poverty does not spread is attracting attention from the world. Why is Japan stable and safe? I don't know the exact reason, but if this is the national character of the Japanese people, then the influx of immigrants may not be desirable because it would lead to the destruction of the culture. Krugman suggests that when China enters an era of low growth, poverty, social instability, and riots will occur frequently. Even now, mass protests for economic reasons are not uncommon in China. Krugman is often asked if China will become like Japan before. Krugman denies. According to Krugman, it will be worse in China than in Japan. Next time, I will talk about how to evaluate Chinese stock prices. That's all for now. See you next time.